Ready to soundtrack your summer? With Red Bull Summer All Day Play, you choose a playlist that fits your summer vibe the best. Are you a festival fanatic, a deep-end DJ, a road dog, or a trail mixer? Just add a song to your chosen playlist and put your summer on track. Red Bull Summer All Day Play. Red Bull gives you wings. Visit redbull.com/brightsummer ahead to learn more. See you this summer.
There are some moments in life you'll never forget. The Depression hit everyone hard. No jobs, no food. We were broke.
Looks like you still owe a balance on this semester.
So what's that about, making some money?
You're the rowing team. You're on it, you get a part-time job included, cheap place to live.
8-man crew is the most difficult team sport in the world. The average human body is just not meant for such things. Most of you will not be chosen.
Beautiful speech, Coach.
And action!
Hello and welcome to episode 378 of the Filmmakers Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk
filmmaking,
from indie film to studio films and
high-end TV and everything in between.
How to get them made, how to make them, and how to try not to
royally sink that boat.
In our very, very humble opinion. I am Giles Alderson, and you are?
I'm Dom Lenoir.
And on today's episode, Dom sat down with producer Grant Heslov. Now, if you don't know Grant, he is the producer of the film, which is out now, called Boys in the Boat. Oh, yes.
And he's a long-time collaborator, a very long-time collaborator, with Master George Clooney himself.
Indeed he is. So, Dom, were you up the creek without a paddle with Grant Heslov, or were you rowing in the right direction?
Yes, I feel like we were all in the same boat. paddling anecdotes, into the slipstream and having a lovely time.
I like that. What will our audience learn from your lovely chat with Grant Heslov?
So they'll learn how to build long-term relationships, such as with Grant and George Clooney when they started out together and kept in contact. They will learn about finding original IP and why they prefer that method for building their projects together. They will learn about being nimble on set and not over-directing.
I love it. And you obviously talked about Boys in the Boat, the latest film from Grant and George Clooney. I love it. And it's really interesting what you said there, and what our audience will learn about building long-term relationships in this business, because it's so important. Were Grant and George, did they meet when they were young? Is that something that you talked about?
Yeah, they met years ago, before either of them were really famous, and formed a relationship, which is brilliant.
Yeah, and so important. Like in this industry, it really is about relationships. And if people trust you and know you and like you, they will, when you send a project their way, will want to work with you, especially if you worked together in the past. The amount of repeat business, in shop terms, if you go and get a jacket from someone and you liked each other, you'll probably go back to the same shop. And it's the same with filmmaking. There is no difference. You'll go to the same restaurant because you liked it, or you like the staff, or you like the food. And it's the same with filmmaking. It really is. You like the same writers, you like the same producers or crew. So I really like that. Should we read out some of Grant's credits? Because as Dom mentioned there, he was an actor. A couple of them. We'll read out a couple of them. He was in True Lies. He was in Congo, The Birdcage, Dante's Peak, Enemy of the State, and The Scorpion King. And then he directed Part 6, which was a really cool independent movie, which led to him co-producing Intolerable Cruelty, which George Clooney starred in with Catherine Zeta-Jones. And then I imagine when they were there, working together, he slipped in the script for Good Night and Good Luck, which Grant wrote, produced, and ended up starring in it as Don Hewitt as well, which of course George Clooney directed, which must have started their producer-director relationship. Other credits then include Leatherheads, again, which he produced and was in as well, which George Clooney directed. Men Who Stare at Goats, which he directed and produced.
Didn't star in The Goat.
No, but George Clooney did star in that movie. He also directed all of George Clooney's Nespresso adverts. Every single one of them. That's cool. It's kind of really cool. Then he went.
A little of an espresso.
It is. Then he went on to produce The American, which again starred George Clooney and directed by Anton Corbijn. Then he produced and wrote The Ides of March, which George directed and starred in, along with Ryan Gosling. Then he produced Argo. And then August, Osage County, which was directed by John Wells. And then he produced and wrote The Monuments Men. He also produced Money Monster, Suburbicon, and then he produced The Tender Bar, which was George Clooney's latest movie before The Boys in the Boat. He also exec produced The Ticket to Paradise, which George starred in. I mean, that relationship's immense. To be still working with the same, person over all that time as a producer, director, switching that combo around. So Grant directed them sometimes, Grant starred in them, George has starred in them. Wow, what a relationship. What a relationship.
Just like me and you.
Just like me and you.
Except maybe not quite as handsome as those two.
Yes, maybe not as handsome as those two, but interestingly, Catch-22.
Not far off.
Yes, not far off. And that is who are you, George or Grant? And that is a very Catch-22 situation, because they also produced and George directed Catch-22, the TV series as well. Love that.
Oh, very good.
Very, very good. So that chat with Dom and Grant is coming up for you, in about a minute. But thank you for all those of you who listened to last week's episode. Well, two actually. J.A. Bayona talking about Society of the Snow, which, as Dom rightly said earlier, has been doing what business?
Snow business.
It's been doing...
There's no business like snow business.
There isn't. This is full on. I mean, it's avalanche.
It's been an avalanche. It was a nice idea that's turned into a massive hit. Actually, it's like blown a lot of the big contenders out of the frozen water.
Yeah. You can listen to that one after you've listened to this with Grant. J. Bayona also directed The Impossible and The Orphanage. And then last Tuesday was Oppenheimer. We had the HODs behind Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. That's an absolute wonderful episode to listen to. So next Tuesday could be Dom's chat with David Ayer about The Beekeeper.
Whoa!
I know.
Was that a filmed interview?
Yeah, and it was filmed as well.
Got a great photo for that one. It's going to be the Facebook profile picture.
Can't wait for that. And then also we've got Adana Kippel talking about Reflect. It looks like we have got Daniel Kaluuya as well soon talking about The Kitchen, as well as production team. Oliver Krimpas is soon, as well as The Promised Land and The Bike Riders with Sarah Green. And the director
Jeff Nichols.
Or on Tuesday it could be The End We Start From, where Dom sat down and chatted with
Mahalia Belair,
the director.
Also met Jodie Comer.
Yeah, she's amazing, isn't she?
Funny little anecdote for that
for that episode as well. But for now though, this is Dom sitting down and having a great chat with Grant Heslov, the producer of The Boys in the Boat, which is out
granted
now in cinemas. Here it is.
Hello.
Hi, Grant. How are you doing?
I'm very good. How are you?
Very well. Yeah, busy time of year with all the films and the award seasons, but it's the best time of year because you get to see all the meaningful dramas back to back. Great experiences. It was really nice actually to go to the screening in London the other day with some of the cast and crew. Had a lovely chat with George, and I've been saying to everyone, because you meet people from the films and sometimes they hang around and sometimes they're whisked off after the ceremony, but George stuck around and he said hello. He was friendly, personable. And I've heard from so many people that his attitude is just brilliant. There's no divide, there's no barrier, and I think that's such a nice thing for filmmakers, whether you're at the top or you're just starting out. That you can go along and you can see an amazing film, and then you chat to the director afterwards, and they make you laugh, and you're all part of the same. You're in the same boat, the same rowing boat. To start off with a little joke there. Yeah, how is all the screenings for you? How's that part of the process for you as a producer?
Oh, I love screening because it's the reason you make these films is because you want you want an audience and you want people to see them, particularly in a film like this where you really feel like audiences enjoy it. I mean, we've all made films where that maybe they didn't work as the way that you intended them to, but this one did. And so it's really fun to see it with I love to sit and, and we don't get that many chances to see it with an audience either. So George and I, when we do, a lot of filmmakers, like we always want to get there early before the screenings are over so we could sit in for the last reel and just see how people are reacting.
Yeah, there's nothing better than because obviously you have your own ideas about the film when it's in a script phase or when you're going through the rushes and all of that. But when you actually get to see it with an audience, that there's bits that you weren't sure were funny that the audience are laughing at, and there's other bits that you were expecting to be like a slam dunk, which didn't make people laugh. But people enjoy things in ways that you never would have expected.
It's true. And it's George and I both started doing theater, live theater. And when we were young, much, much younger. And so we always love to be able to see the films with an audience because you can tell where the film is working and if it's not working. And, and that's why, some filmmakers don't love to do previews. We like to do the preview part. I don't love so much the focus group stuff, because those can devolve and they can be led, but one person can kind of take over. But when you sit in a theater with 600 people who have no idea what it is they're going to see, and you get a real reaction, it's very helpful in the editing.
Yeah, I mean, on a film like this, because we're in the sort of the awards season territory, at what stage do you start to think about, when the film is going to be placed? Are we talking about this at the script stage, or is it much later in the proceedings that you think, okay, well, this is one that's got real legs. Let's time this around, certain festivals, that kind of process.
On a film like this, it wasn't the script stage. There are some films that are made where, and I would say that's more, sort of maybe like superhero, like films where like they're releasing it. And then they back into a date. So sometimes they'll even start without a full script, which I always think is the biggest disaster that anybody can make.
Exactly.
So on this one, I'm trying to remember when we dated it. I think we dated it once we previewed it the first time. And then, right. Because once you preview it, then you're like, all right, are we going to do a lot more work to this film, or are we pretty close to done? And for this one, we were done because we previewed it. We realized that it was exactly what we wanted. And then, then it was just talking about when would be the right time to release it. And, we knew, George and I at least knew that this is a film for the whole family. So for us, this is this was like the perfect date. This is the dream date.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great time for it. And it's a nice feel-good movie. And that was one of the things that struck me, is that it just had that warmth. There's the heavy dramas and there's the sad things, but also you really do need those inspiring stories. And I think there's actually a sort of a shortage of it sometimes. Is just a good, well-made, feel-good movie that isn't cheesy.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And if you know our body of work at all, we can make some cynical films and we can make some.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But we were very, very interested in making a sort of more of a feel-good film, because it has felt, at least for us, and particularly in the States, it's just felt like a dark time, and also and with events around the world. So sometimes a movie doesn't have to be groundbreaking if it just makes the audience feel good and feel something.
But at the same time, I mean, you say groundbreaking, but a well-made film, I think a well-made Hollywood film or a well-made drama, it doesn't have to be sad to be very well made. It's actually quite hard to. I think it's quite hard to make a feel-good story that doesn't feel sometimes a bit saccharine or sometimes a bit sweet. And this was a nice kind of change, especially when you're dealing with some of the time around World War II. It could have gone very heavy. You managed to sort of capture that moment in time.
Yeah, we sort of felt on that one that there isn't a better and when I say better, there isn't a worse villain than Hitler, at least in modern times for us. And so we didn't need to comment on it too much. There were actually some other pieces that we actually cut from the film that did a little more commenting. And as we watched, we're like, yeah, you know what? That doesn't really serve the film.
Yeah. So can we talk about how this project, how it sort of got its first legs, how the idea came about?
So, it's based on a fantastic book by the same name.
Yeah.
And I had read this book many years ago when it had come out, and tried to buy it and didn't get it, and that happens all the time.
So what went wrong in the buying process for the book?
Another studio just paid more money.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, bidding war. Yeah, sure.
Or whatever reason. Maybe they had, I don't remember the particular circumstances. Could have been they had, somebody else attached, or it was a director. I don't remember this was a long time ago.
Yeah, sure.
And then many, many years ago, then cut to many years later, and George and I had made a new deal at MGM. And when we got there, when you get there, they usually say, oh, here's some properties we have. And this was a property that they had just recently acquired. Like they had gotten it through like a bankruptcy, a thing. It was like, one of those just crazy things. And so I said, oh, well, that's something that I've always loved. And I reminded George, and he's like, yeah, let's read it again. And we did. And then we thought, okay, this seems like something that would be really.
So were you both the natural choice for MGM? Was it okay? These two would stylistically fit the film very well, or was it a bit of a pitch?
No, I think it was one of those things like it came up in conversation that they had the book, and I said, oh, I love that book. Who is there anybody attached? Do you have a script? Like what was the situation? And then once we sort of got that all sorted out, we decided that we wanted to start from scratch.
Right.
We wanted to hire a writer who we loved and just develop it in the normal process.
So let's talk about this development process, because we're a filmmaking podcast, so we love going into the details. So you've got the IP, you've got the studio involved, which is obviously a very big step in getting anything off the ground. How did you two work with yourself and George and the writer in terms of that collaboration with what parts of the book to adapt, how to structure it, where to start the story, where to end the story, those kind of decisions?
We had just done a film recently, back then it was recent, called The Midnight Sky. And,
the sci-fi.
And Mark Smith had adapted that. He also wrote The Revenant, and he's just a terrific writer and a really easy collaborator, which for us is important. And so we called him up and sent him the book, and he felt the same way we did about it. So this one was pretty easy, because it's the story is really good, and it's the book is very good. So the hardest thing we had to do is figure out, how do we tell the story and only show 3 races, basically, or 3 big races. Because the book has a lot more races. There's a lot more races, and it's, and it spans a lot of time. And so it's figuring out sort of how to compress it. There's also a lot of backstory in the book, and I think decided that we didn't need as much as they had in the book, or we couldn't have it.
There's so many characters. I suppose that's the tricky bit in this one.
There is, but really, and the decision we made, and it's pretty apparent in the book too, is that this is the point of view of Joe Rance. This is his story. And so everything sort of stems from that. And so as we're talking about, what to put in the book, and I think Mark did an outline. Usually he does, not a detailed outline. I'm not a huge fan of the really detailed outlines. Some writers will write like a 40, 50 page outline.
Yeah. But then you're halfway to the script.
I like more of a bullet point outline that's more about structure, because most of the writers that we work with, I don't worry that they're not going to put all the color in. I just need to see what the lines, what the what the structure is. And so once we had that, then he wrote, a draft, and George and I had notes, and we just get on the phone and we just talk about them. But he delivered us a really good first draft. Yeah. So I'll tell you, I would say that the percentage of first good drafts that I've read in my career, and I hate to say it's a long career now, is probably about 3%.
Wow.
I mean, I can think of like, we got Argo. I got the first draft of Argo, and I was like, okay, well, this is a film. This is, it's now, all we need to do now is figure out like who's going to direct it and who's going to play the lead, and then we can adjust a few things as we go. But and it's just so rare that happens, though.
It is. I mean, it's a difficult sort of point of view, actually, getting that first draft, because sometimes you've got all these ideas and then it comes through and it's nowhere near. And I think a lot of the time writers or directors are too eager to send out that first draft. And sometimes it might be a lot more. It might be 17 drafts before it's actually all of the structural stuff sorted out.
Yeah, I was talking with a terrific writer, Jez Butterworth, a British writer, the other day, and we were talking about one of his mentors. He was Sidney Pollack, who was writing a script for, and he was young at that time, and I said, well, what was that like? And he said, we wrote this script for, it was he and his brother, and he wrote this script for him, and he said, he's like, listen, guys, you got to think about a screenplay. It's like a house, right? You got to figure out, what the layout of the house is, that the kitchen's over here and that this is over here and this is it. And he's like, so right now you guys got to go back to work and you got to figure out the layout of this house because it's not right.
Yeah. It's like I suppose it's like having a stairway that goes into the side of a wall and then it just, you can't go anywhere.
The next bit, they turned it in and he says, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm probably getting it wrong, but he says something to the effect of, now you've got the house right, but now the house needs a ghost.
Right.
And the wire, there's wiring over here that needs to be fixed. And it was just an interesting way to think about it. But the other thing that he said, and this is to your point about turning in and being on time and what, do I turn it in or do I keep working? He said that he and his brother, now they just make they have a time, and they say, at 12 o'clock on this day, we are handing our script in. And he said it forces them to get it done on time, but more importantly, to sort of, not be precious about it. Put your pencil down.
Yeah.
Turn it in. They found that it's made them better writers.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think having some kind of parameters where you I mean, I think it's the same actually in terms of getting a movie made as well. If you say I'm going to make this movie by this date and just start, everything sort of, you need to get everything to fall into line with that. But if you say, well, I'm working on something, but it might happen, it might go somewhere.
Yeah, no, you're right. Sometimes you just got to act as if.
Exactly. I mean, I think that really goes for, because I mean, filmmaking is so, until it's greenlit, it's all theoretical. It's all in that kind of that ballpark of all or nothing. What were some of the moments that once you got this first draft that you went through and discussed with George about how you'd like to make this movie and what more maybe changes you'd like to do and how things were different from your perspective based on the first draft?
Well, once we got a draft that we were happy with and got it to the place that was ready to go, and it wasn't long. It wasn't a long process. The studio was on board, and they had basically given us a number early on and said, you can make the movie for this amount and let's go. So really, then it just got to be about schedule, when we could do it with our schedules, and when he could do it, George could do it with his schedule, which is juggling between acting work and philanthropic work and all the other stuff. So once we figured out when we were going to go, then it was just a matter of really just what we always do, sort of calling the gang back together, production designer, DP, start the wardrobe, Jenny Egan, all get everybody back, to make sure that they can come play with us, and we just start designing the way it's going to look, the way it's going to feel. You know, where are we going to shoot it? We start sending scouts out. We're working on budgets, so it's all just kind of, you know, once we say go, we just go.
How much do you like to use crew that you already know or you've worked with before versus bringing in fresh people? Is there like a sort of a fairly expanded circle of collaborators that you really trust and you'll work with like 90% of them? Or do you like to have a few new people, a few older people?
Well, it always works out that way because generally
of availability.
Somebody's not available. But, you know, when we find somebody we love to work with, then we just keep working with them. You know, it is like a family. It's like, you know, it's like the circus. It's like any of those things. You spend a lot of time with these people. So not only do you want them to be talented, which they must be, but you want to be able to stand them and be able to have a few laughs. So we really do work with, you know, particularly department heads. I'd say, you know, 80% of the time it's the same people.
Do you ever have trouble where, because I mean, one person on set that maybe doesn't really want to be there, or maybe doesn't quite, it could even be that there's not even an attitude problem. It's just that they don't quite gel with the other creative. Have you had many of those moments as a producer, or is it something you sort of got quite good at spotting early now?
I haven't had many of them, but I have had them, and it can be quite disruptive, particularly the longer you go. So generally in pre-production, if you can spot it and remedy it, that's the time to do it. Once you get into production, it's like exponentially more difficult.
Well, exactly, and then obviously the energy on set becomes it can be infectious. It can be you know, a bit of dissent, and then one person starts complaining, and then you know, people are working hard. So it's you know, I always think it's 50-50, you know, percent as important the project you're making as the people that you're hiring, and
absolutely,
you know, what their work ethic is. So moving on to, okay, so you've got the script's in a good place, you've discussed a few notes, and you're starting to build the team. Well, maybe let's talk about the casting process and the studio's involvement at this point, and how they're reacting to the script and how things are coming together.
So as we start to talk about casting, at this point I would have our production designer and locations people out scouting, because that's the next big thing. Figure out literally where are we actually going to make this movie. And now there's a lot more involved than there used to be. It's not just about like where is the best look going to be, but also where's the best look that we can get the best economic situation and you know, help for production and all that stuff. So as that's happening, George and I are casting. And the studio's great on casting. I mean, we knew going in that, you know, there aren't many, you know, stars that are, you know, over 6 feet tall and can look like they can, you know, be a rower. So the fact that we found Callum, for us, you know, was amazing, but we knew that the boat wasn't going to be filled with a bunch of, so it was really more about, let's fill the boat with a bunch of good looking guys. I mean, that's not such a bad thing, at least.
But also, you know, they're all good actors.
yeah, of course. Yes. It wasn't, you know, the prerequisite, I mean, before we would even audition them, they had to be at least 6 feet tall.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you go for
and then
making sure it's all authentic. Yeah.
And then it was about how they acted. And then if they acted and we also physically could believe that they could be rowers. So that was sort of for that. And then for the coach, you know, we're just, George and I are both such big fans of Joel's. He's in a sports movie. He did a film called Warrior, which is
it's such a good film. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a great film.
It is,
and we had heard that he's a really good and easy guy to work with as well. Yeah. So that's who we wanted. And that's, you know, we went to the studio. They were fine with it. They were good on the casting. And I think that, you know, this movie is not like a crazy expensive movie. So, you know, you get a little more leeway.
Yeah.
For us is great.
I think it's nice to have those kind of those well-regarded like powerhouse actors that you just know will always turn up and they'll always do a good job. It's like this sort of Matt Damon, you're going to get just something solid from him, whatever movie you put him in. And Joel was fantastic in this. And that's a great reference to the MMA film that he did, which was absolutely fantastic.
I'm not even an MMA fan, but
that movie is
the movie's really good.
Yeah. So just in terms of, we talked a little bit about, okay, it's not too high a budget, George Clooney directing. So how much in terms of the, the inverted commas casting names versus what they're expecting from the sales side? So, I mean, was that the thinking? Okay, we'll cast Joel, we'll cast some of the older actors with some, slightly more known faces and slightly less known faces as the athletes. Was that always the initial thinking, or was it kind of more open than that and it just sort of fitted into place?
I mean, George and I kind of just say, look, this is who we want. And they don't, unless it's really out of bounds, everybody's generally been pretty great. We've had cases in other films though, where, it's been a battle because a lot of times, they'd rather you put a star in, and even if the star isn't right for the film, even if they're not right for the part, and including George, he turns stuff down all the time, not because he doesn't like the director or he doesn't like the material. He's like, look, I'm not right for this.
Yeah.
I'm not the right person to play this part. I just think in the long run, a film will be, I think about the legacy of a film, and I think a well-acted film by the right actor is going to have better legs than a film that is, not necessarily poorly acted, but it's just the wrong actor.
Yeah, sometimes a mismatch can just, it's not the fault of the actor, it's not the fault of the director, but when you just see someone that maybe is so well identified with one type of performance or one character, or it just doesn't feel, congruent to who they are as a person underneath all of that, it can easily jar the movie, and it's great. I mean, Callum is absolutely fantastic in this. I kept thinking he almost looks like a young Richard Gere. Like there's something about his eyes, and he's really got. I just kept thinking this is like a real genius casting, because he's got that like old time movie magic, which I think George and you have also brought. He's a
handsome kid, and it's funny, when you get, and we did this, these were just, taped auditions because it was still COVID times. Yeah. And we were in LA and he was in the UK. And, it's funny, you watch and you kind of watch and watch a lot of auditions, and then one comes through and all of a sudden you sit up and you're like, that's the guy.
Yeah, that's the guy. Yeah.
And then we did a Zoom with him just to make sure that he was, and the funny thing is that when we Zoomed with him, he spoke to us with an American accent.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then when he came to work, so it wasn't until for George it was recent, even more recent. But for me, we were probably a month into shooting or something, and we were gonna go get a dinner one night, like on a weekend, and he showed up and he started talking with his normal accent, and I was like, oh my God. I'm glad I never heard that before. We would never have cast you.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I was talking to my colleague Giles and after the movie, and he mentioned he was a British actor, and I just thought, what? Because he looks like an American movie star. I mean, he's just got that. He sounds the part. He feels the part of this role. I mean, it's a really really sort of brilliant casting. So were you shooting through COVID for this, or partly through COVID?
Yeah, in fact, when I landed here in like January 3rd of 2022. Yeah. And I got off the plane and I had COVID.
Oh, right. Yeah. So good start.
Then so we started shooting on a Monday.
Yeah.
Saturday before we started shooting, we decided that George and I were just going to have the whole cast, and if they had a wife or a partner or whatever, everybody for a dinner. And we got a restaurant, and it was like one of those restaurants in London where you go downstairs and there's a little private room. So we did that. And then the next 2 days later, we started shooting on that Monday. Mm-hmm. And then everybody started going down. Joel got COVID.
Yeah.
2 days later, George got COVID. All the actors got COVID except for Callum.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So yes,
because he's the hero of the story, so he doesn't
we
get
had
it.
to like, but we never stopped shooting. We just worked, or we just you know,
which is huge pressure for you as a producer, I guess.
Well, so I had to be on the set directing, you know, and then if I had a question, I would get George on a Zoom and I'd turn the thing around so he could see the monitor, and I'm like, okay, here's the takes I got, and he's like, great. Or he'd say, you know what, have him try another one, or oh, you know what, I get me an angle that from over here, whatever it was. So it was just, you know, we just had to slog our way through it.
I mean, that sounds like you obviously have a very strong collaboration to be on each other's pages to even be able to do that and jump in and sort of, you know, take over the reins while he's not doing so well.
And we shot, you know, I shot all the second unit stuff. So we had already been talking, you know, constantly about how we wanted the movie to look and feel and all that stuff. So
that's brilliant. So I mean, let's talk a little bit about where you set the movie and some of those final locations, and because I mean it's difficult shooting in different countries, different areas in general. How was that in terms of piecing that together and doing unit moves from one place to another in the different sections?
Yeah, it's, you know, we were in some of those locations for, you know, quite a while. Yeah. So we were up in the Cotswolds for, I don't know, weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And so, and we built basically a street up there, and we used it for a lot of those street scenes you saw. We even redressed it for different scenes, for the opening and for the scene where he has with his father. Yep. But that was all just one little street we built, like in the field next to this lake that we shot. And then we built the full boathouse, you know, the Washington boathouse. We built that completely, front and back, the interior, exterior. And then we shot a lot in there. I think the hardest place we shot was on the Thames in Henley. Oh, just because just logistically, that's a hard place to shoot, get in and out of. There's a lot of people. You can't literally close it down. So there's a lot of people you have to sort of deal with, and that was probably the trickiest place.
What informed the shooting in the UK? Was it always just, I mean, was it from a financial perspective? Does it make sense?
In this case, it offered us everything that we needed, which was, you know, we needed good places to shoot the rowing, and you've got tons of water, and oddly enough, it's best to really not have anything around the water, and then we can put it all in post.
Yeah, that makes sense.
As opposed to the other, like, you know, if you go to Seattle now, it looks nothing like it did, you know, back then. And so we would end up having to do more work just to sort of, it would have been a very difficult place for us to shoot. So, you know, you have great crews here.
Yeah.
And you have great financial incentives. So
true.
There's, I mean, all you know how much stuff is shooting here. I mean, between Netflix and Warner Brothers and all the different I mean, everybody's shooting here, and that's because there's a real depth of crew, and both above and below the line, and also there's great actors here.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the main differences or maybe challenges of shooting in the UK versus America? Because obviously you've done a lot in America.
Well, it depends where. You know, look, I wish we could shoot everything in Los Angeles because that's where I live, and I would like to be home. And we also have, you know, great weather. So the weather is probably the most challenging thing about shooting here. You know, you can get some really bad, as you know, you can get some really bad weather, and we could use a little bad weather in this movie, but we couldn't. I mean, we couldn't have a ton of bad weather.
Sure.
So, you know, that's probably the most. And then shooting in London, in the city, it's tricky. It's tricky to shoot here. There's a lot of people and a lot of traffic and a lot of logistics that have to happen.
It's very condensed. Yeah.
The trade-off is you get all this beautiful scenery.
Yeah. Yeah, it is stunning, and it does. I mean, there was never a moment where I was thinking, "Oh, this is a UK story." Like, I think you did a very convincing job of placing it where it's supposed to be set. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about post. You've shot the movie. You've managed to survive all the COVID waves and all those logistical challenges. Were there any pickups that were needed? How long do you like to leave the director to, George in this case, to go through and work with the editor and do that first or second or third edit before you like to get your eyes on it?
It varies depending on the film. It's usually pretty quick that George gets a cut. He does a cut. I mean, normally when we make a film, he's cutting as we go.
Okay, yeah.
So he might have a cut by like 2 weeks after we finish. This one, we didn't cut as we went because the racing stuff and it's just, there's so much footage, and it really needed a kind of attention that was going to be different than anything we'd done before. So this one probably was a little bit longer, but it was probably was maybe 5 or 6 weeks that I saw a cut. And then once we saw the cut, we were like, okay, this movie's, it's working and it's going to be good. Now we really got to figure out how to make these races sing. And that really was where the most of that work went. And it was really, Tanya, our editor, mostly it was just like, okay, good. Now go back and do more.
Right. So were some of those pickups like the extreme close-ups on the oars?
None of that was all part of it. We didn't do any pickups.
Okay, so you've done it all you got it all in the can in the shoot. That's brilliant.
We had it all. I spent days just shooting hands on oars, and because we knew we were going. We had always designed it from the very opening of the film when you see the young kids rowing, that we wanted it to be. We wanted these shots almost abstract.
I mean, I think for me it was actually. I'm not sure if it was designed that way, but I was constantly thinking with all the close-ups and the noises of the oars that something was going to snap, something was going to go wrong, one of the oars was going to fall out, the boat was going to break or some kind of disaster. I was sort of vaguely aware of the real story, but I wasn't sure which sections they'd won or whatever. So I thought that the editing especially worked incredibly well in terms of creating that sort of anxiety about every facet of the race. So that collaboration with the editor certainly paid off.
It's not, we knew going in that rowing is not the most dynamic sport, as a spectator sport. So we had to figure out a way, figure out a language, figure out the lenses, and the pieces of equipment that would allow us to make the shots, to make it exciting. Because, these boats, they're huge.
They're massive. Yeah.
When you see them, and then the oars go out on the side. So so if I'm in a boat with a camera, I can't even get close to the boat because of the oars. You can't get in front of the boat because if you make a wake, then they can't row.
Yeah.
So there's only really, you have to be kind of behind them with a long arm that can get out and get to the sides and actually get around. And that's, it's tricky when you're moving, they're moving, the water's moving. It took us a while to figure it out.
Was that a lot of time in the schedule allowed for that? Because obviously they are kind of pretty key sequences, and it's a sports movie in a sense, so you have to do it rightly.
Yeah, we definitely, we shoot fast.
Yeah,
I'd say we probably shoot, like you've heard, like Clint Eastwood shoots fast. I don't know if we shoot as fast as he does, but we're close. So we made sure though that we left plenty of. The idea is you double the amount of time that you think you'll need.
Yes. Yeah. So we talked about Clint Eastwood. He's sort of created a brand for himself as a fast shooter. He's anecdoted in so many filmmaking discussions, which is brilliant. In fact, one of the reasons I got into directing was watching Mystic River and seeing him as a director. So I'm very fond of that kind of method and just good American. Good American cinema. So just in terms of the rehearsal and how you prepare that side of things in this. Is it a lot of conversation? Because I mean, it sounds like with you and George at least, there's a lot of conversations backwards and forwards, and it's a lot of bouncing of ideas. Does that also go into the working with the actors ahead of the shoot? Is there a lot of discussions, or is it a lot of actual rehearsing on set or a rehearsal period before the movie shoots?
You know what? It's really none of those things.
No,
I mean,
okay.
in this case, for the boys in the boat, you know, they trained for 3 months together. So their rehearsal was just learning how to row, and through that, they all became really great friends. Which is
okay. So kind of bonding by doing the thing and actually becoming the teammates, which is brilliant.
But as far as like, we don't rehearse. And then the way that we generally work is you get on the set. I mean, look, if somebody wants to talk about stuff, or if there's something very specific to talk about, of course, you know, and also through conversations about wardrobe and, you know, hair and all that stuff, you know, but, you know, mostly it's about get on the set, you know, get everybody out and just with the actors and us there, just rehearse, you know, go through the scene and then see where it is. Sometimes it's exactly where it needs to be, and all you need to do is just shoot it. Other times you got to figure it out, or you got to say, you know what, the way that this room is set up now isn't going to work. Let's change but in terms of like a real, like, and I've worked with, as an actor, I've worked with people like that, and as a producer working with other directors, I have. But our style is much more, let's take the temperature, let's see what it is, and then just make the adjustments as we need, as opposed to, you know.
Do you think that's because you've prepared the script to the point where it's at a high standard, and combining that with the fact that you've both got acting backgrounds, so therefore you can get straight to the point of what you want to adjust?
I think it's both of those things.
Yeah.
I mean, if your script is, you know, iffy, then you're spending a lot of time discussing how to make a scene work.
Yeah.
And that'll kill your day. That just kills your day. I think it just sucks the energy out of.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of casting, again, if you cast someone that isn't necessarily right for it, or they just don't understand or identify with your vision as a director or how it's written on the page, then you're going to spend a lot of time and energy trying to, you know, push a salmon up the wrong stream. It's
so true. Listen, when you hire the right actor, really, it's the job of the director and everybody, really, just, you know, let them or her do it. And then, you know, of course, there's always adjustments and there's always things, but it's like, you know, that's great. Give me 10% more. And then they do it, and, you know, it's better than you imagined it when you read it. Now, you know, there are certain scenes that maybe you want to rehearse if it's, I don't know, if it's a film where your schedule is really tight and it's a long scene, or there's a complicated scene. Well, then there's a reason to rehearse it. And we might do that on a weekend before we were to shoot that scene, just to read it at least and get a sense. But I have worked with some people, some directors, they want to, you know, they do 2 weeks of rehearsal, and every day you go down and sit around and read and act it out and block it. And I also just feel like it never feels the same as when you're on the set.
No, it's true.
Sitting around a table.
There's an energy, isn't there?
Yeah, you sit around a table, and, you know, once you get in that location, and, you know, it could be, you know, there could be a glass of water that literally just changes the performance for whatever reason. So
yeah, I do really. I mean, you obviously know this better than anyone with an acting background, but I really do think it's not just the acting. I think it's everyone being immersed in the world that is being created brings everyone's game up. You know, it's like when you're an athlete and you go and you're rowing in the Olympics, something switches up a level that you're never going to get in a sort of a training environment.
Yeah, game day is always, you know, that's when you're at your best. Hopefully.
Yeah. So let's go back a bit. We've covered this movie nicely. I'd be really interested to hear about how you and George started collaborating, and maybe even how you sort of transitioned from acting into the producing side as well. Can you talk about those backstories for yourself?
George and I met when I was 19 and he was 21 in acting class. So that's how we met, and we did a scene together, and we just became friends, and we remained best friends for, you know, many, many years. And then along the way, we had done little things together where, you know, there was a movie many, many years ago. This is before he was a famous actor, that he wanted to direct, and we couldn't get it made, but we were going to do a trailer. So we shot this trailer, and then we did, you know, I acted, like he got me a couple gigs on TV shows he was on, and, you know, and then if you cut to, I don't know, 20 years later, he was, you know, a movie star, and I was doing pretty well as an actor, you know.
I mean, you got a lot of credits.
True Lies and Congo and all these kind of big action movies, which is not a place that I expected to be in. And then there came a point where I just I got more interested in the other side, and I directed a short film that he was in. And he was in it, and Jennifer Aniston was in it, and, you know, it was, and I just loved it. I wrote it, I directed it, I loved every second of it. And so that was really it. And then I started working with him, and he was at that time partners with Steven Soderbergh. Yeah. And I worked for the two of them, and I kind of started my way up from the bottom. I said, look, I just want to be on the other side of the camera. And I started sort of in doing a few television things, and we made a television show. I just learned producing kind of just by saying, I'm the producer, basically. And then he and I started writing together, and we wrote Good Night and Good Luck, and that's kind of from there everything.
Yeah, I mean, how did you learn to? I mean, do you think a lot of it's people skills in terms of producing? Because obviously you've got to learn the technical stuff, you've got to figure out how to negotiate, but there's a huge amount of people skills.
There is a huge amount of people skills. Although, I mean, there are many producers who are total dickheads, and they still are successful. So,
well, that's true. Yeah,
I think it's, you know, it's like. You know, I'll come back to it. It's like building a house. It's like doing anything where you kind of are in charge of overseeing the whole thing and making sure that it comes in time, on budget, quality. And so those were all skills that I felt really confident with. I really think that for me, the thing was really just understanding material and figuring out how to develop and identify good material.
Yeah,
that to me is the fun part, and also the most challenging part.
Because you started in Intolerable Cruelty. That was your first co-producing, is that right?
Yeah, but when, you know, that was one of the classic. You know, you know, a producer who I knew gave me the script. Yeah. And I read it, and I loved it, and it was Coen Brothers. I mean, and I gave it to George, and I said, you should, because I think he had read it and he read it again, and I said, you should do this. And he's like, yeah, I should do this. And so his agent at the time, you know, like, got me a co-producing credit and, you know, like a tiny fee. So the joke with the Coen Brothers was, and, you know, now I know those guys, and I know their line producer, a guy named Bob Graff, really well. Yeah. And the joke was like, you know, when's Grant Heslov showing up? You know, because my name's on there and all this stuff. Yeah. And so, and subsequently, I actually did a short film that they directed that I acted in with Josh Brolin. So I bring it up to them all the time about how I was the reason that movie Intolerable Cruelty happened.
But then you went briefly into Unscripted and K Street, which is TV, which is a completely different world. Before you then did Good Night and Good Luck, which was your first producer. Is that right?
No, I produced those other two things as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And so I learned a ton, because that was just, you know, that was really just me and George. I mean, we directed them. Mm-hmm. We even operated the cameras. We did everything. We had to join the union to do that. Right. But then Good Night and Good Luck was the first feature.
Yeah, feature. Yeah. And what was the process in terms of getting that made? Was it enough at that point that George was obviously very well known, or was it still quite challenging for both of you to get this feature film made, like in terms of the financing?
What made it more challenging is that we wanted to do it in black and white.
Yeah, which is never popular.
And so we were at, you know, our deal was at Warner Brothers at the time. and they had just started Warner Independent because George and Steven Soderbergh said, look, we need a place to do our smaller films. You know, we don't want to, the only place at the time to do films like that was Harvey Weinstein. And they're like, let's do them with you. And so they started a division just for those guys. And the first film that we brought them was Good Night and Good Luck. And they're like, no, we can't do it black and white. So we ended up just getting independent money to finance it. And it wasn't hard to do that, because George was in it.
Yeah, and it's a great movie.
And it was that movie was it was under $7 million, so it wasn't an expensive film. Even at the time, it wasn't an expensive film.
Yeah, I mean that's really it's a very affordable budget for that kind of.
I wish
cast
I could do every film for that budget.
Yeah. Do you feel like those kind of films? I mean, I feel it's a bit of a cliche, but everyone says that the sort of the Hollywood indie or the those just great, good quality independent dramas with that are made at a high level are just almost. It used to be that it was hard. Now it's almost impossible. I'm hearing from so many producers. Do you struggle to get those things made these days? Is it hard? Do you have to just push the budget up and make it more of a?
The economics are hard. That's those in between films. So either you got to figure out a way to make them more. We have one now that we're trying to make, and it's a little more expensive than it should be because there are some big crowd scenes. But you have to have them. The film doesn't work, so it's kind of the way things have gone, and it is frustrating. It's a really frustrating.
It is difficult part
of the business, but it is a business.
It is a business, yeah. But the business is also as much the ideas as it is all the bells and whistles that we talk about, and the the commerciality. It is very much down to good writing and good storytelling.
At the end of the day, to me, that's always. Rises, if it's a good at whatever budget level, if it's $1 million film, if it's a $200 million film, if it works, it's because there was good writing to start with, and a good director. It's just it's impossible to do it any other way, unless there's some magical power that I'm not aware of.
So you mentioned a little bit earlier about finding good ideas as being the hardest thing. How do you find scripts? I mean, sometimes the most recent one, you got given a nice story by the studio and it's a great movie, but it's not always as simple as that. Sometimes it's far harder. What is your vetting process? How do you and George look for new material?
We're constantly scouring. I mean, we get a lot of stuff sent to us, so there's that. But more proactively, it's doing we do a ton of reading, meeting with writers, and developing relationships. And so that when they do, a lot of times I'll read an article or see a story, and then I'll say, hey, this might be great for so-and-so. And then we talk, and then they spark to that. And then all of a sudden there's a collaboration that can happen. And you never know where a good piece of material is going to come from. Argo, it was just a Wired article that I read. That's it. I read it and I was like, I'd never heard this story before. What an interesting way to talk about that part of our history that nobody, I didn't know anybody who knew that story. And that's all that was. And, but a lot of times it's a book, because a book, you know what you have. Yeah. It's you could screw it up, and quite often you do, but, that there's a great story in there. And that's why we almost never buy. I never buy a pitch, and very rare.
That's not adapted. You mean?
We did recently do a pitch, and it's turned out to be a great film. But it's the only time I've ever done that, and it was very specific. It was a very specific kind of thing. But
so just to wrap things up, if you had a last bit of advice, let's say probably as a producer, maybe if you could go back and offer yourself some tips, moments you've really struggled through, or just some ideas you might give to yourself.
The best thing you can do for yourself as a producer is get on a set. get in a production office, you got to get your hands dirty. And if you feel yourself struggling, like I don't know how to do this, or I can't break in, you got to figure out a way, to start at the bottom, and be a production assistant or whatever it takes. If you show up and do the job, you will rise, just the way it is, because we're always looking for people that we can count on.
That's it. It's hard work, and it's not just putting the 10,000 hours into your specialty. It's just going through the trenches, and every time you go through those hard moments, the next time it happens on a film and something crazy goes wrong, you're just a bit more prepared to deal with it.
Exactly.
Lovely. Well, we both thoroughly enjoyed the movie.
Great.
Really enjoyed talking to you, and we wish you the best of success with it.
I appreciate it. This was fun.
Thank you.
There we have it. That was Dom chatting with Grant Heslov. How great was that?
It was pretty exciting.
It was. It must have been exciting to chat to him, being this big Hollywood producer who's, hugely in the game at the moment.
It was, and it was like sort of speaking to the other half of George Clooney anyway. Like they were, they really do sound like two. I say like the left, right half.
Not back
so maybe
side,
he's the left,
front side. Okay.
Not the back side.
Yeah,
No, yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Let's go for a sort of a lateral incision on the dual personality. But yeah, no, I mean he's definitely felt like they're just they're two sort of just so in tune collaborators that they are like part of the same creative entity, and that was quite exciting to get stuck into that.
Yeah, I really liked when you were talking about the IP, that whole situation, why you should be nimble as independent filmmakers, all that stuff is just gold and really interesting and important, and he just gave so much cool advice as well. So well done. Another great chat you've had to start off 2024 on the Filmmakers Podcast, Dom. Well done, primo host.
Thank you.
One day you'll get that mantle officially, and we'll do a blue plaque outside your house or something.
Yeah.
Dom Lenoir once lived here, was primo host on the Filmmakers Podcast.
Live, laugh, love.
His claim to fame.
Live, laugh, love.
Puns. So yeah, The Boys in the Boat is out now. Go watch it. I love this movie. And my mate Joel Fillimore is in the film as well. He was in my movie Arthur and Merlin Knights of Camelot, and he's great.
And that was the big break he needed.
It was the big break he needed for George. George obviously watched Arthur and Merlin beforehand and went, that's the kid I need in my boat.
That's the guy.
That's the guy. That's funny. Yeah. Interestingly, Richard Short, who was starred as King Arthur in Arthur and Merlin Knights of Camelot, which is available now on all good and evil streamers, he sent his. I cut some footage when we're in the middle of filming, and he sent that to Joel Cohen, with him sword fighting and on a horse, and that got him cast. I'm saying that's not the main reason, but one of the reasons he got cast in.
Got him cast as the horse.
Got him cast in Macbeth, Denzel Washington's film, which Richard takes a huge role in. Yeah, so Joel Cohen has watched some of Arthur and Merlin, so technically George Clooney could have as well. There's hope for all of us.
Could well have done.
Yeah. So we will see you on Tuesday. When we don't know who it's going to be, but it could be someone. No, but it will be someone amazing.
It could be someone.
It could be.
We can all agree on that.
Someone. We definitely agree on that. What a surprise for you. Until then, go out there and do something about your career. Write to those people.
Yeah.
Get stuff done. And if you're lucky enough to rise up and do well, it is your duty to
row the elevator down the stream.
I'm just picturing an elevator in a stream now.
Yeah.
And someone in it rowing it. It's like the End of the World movie. It's like the End We Start From type thing.
Yeah. Exactly.
And someone's in that elevator or lift, and they're there in it with an oar.
And it's Arnold Schwarzenegger with his horse from True Lies. Which Grant Heslov stars in. There we go.
There you go. What a full turnaround of events. Aren't we amazing? Yes. No, we're not. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. And until next Tuesday.
Both available for creative pitching.
But until that moment, we will see you next Tuesday. You'll certainly hear from us. Thanks everyone for listening. Take care. Bye.
Bye.